This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
This is The Power of Completions compels you. Leader Fan Radio Network.
What do you mean?
I have no idea. And KFAN.com. 2 minutes, 8 seconds past the hour of 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. We welcome you back to a Tuesday edition of the Bumper to Bumper program. It's generally a 3.5 hour tour. Are we 3.5 today? I assume.
Yes.
No reason we're going to get off early today.
We should be.
Yeah, makes some sense to me. We are delighted you're along for the ride today. Guardsy is the producer of the program. My name is Dan Barreiro, the former Ink-Stained Wretch newspaper of the Twin Cities. So we will go the distance today till 6:30. Outstanding guests that we hope will compel you to continue to listen to the broadcast today. And that will include Kevin Seifert at the bottom of the hour. Sadly, not in studio, Guardsy tells me, but at least we get him. Nacho Lieber, not in studio at 4:47 today. And definitely not in studio, given it's 47 degrees and raining. Luigi will be chatting with us from, shall we say, far more tropical climes. Let me ask you a question I think I've asked Luigi before, because I know you've spent, I've obviously over the decade spent time in Florida, but I think vacationing you've spent more time in Florida than I have, I think. Am I wrong?
We've been there quite a bit.
Okay,
yeah.
So is it true that if you pick, let's just say mid-October on to March, that you will not have to deal with the withering dew points, humidity, and moistness that you most assuredly do in a Florida summer? How far down does the dew point go in the state of Florida when we get to the fall months, the winter months, etc.? Do you recall?
It gets pretty comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets pretty comfortable.
It'll still be hot from a temperature standpoint,
yes,
but nowhere near as steamy.
Exactly.
Because the summer, Florida is unbearable as far as I'm concerned.
Now, today, for example, in where Louis is, West Palm, it's 84 degrees with a dew point of 66. So it's pretty summery. It's pretty Minnesota summery. 84 degrees with a dew point of 66 right now.
Well, that's a pretty high dew point.
Yeah, it's tropical.
That's what you're saying, yeah.
Which makes sense. That's what I'm saying. So today, for example.
Yeah, I guess it may depend. Maybe you got to get to November or December.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious about that. I know we have Florida transplants who listen to the program, and we can certainly talk to Luigi about that, among other things, at 5:30.
Had plenty of tennis tournaments in July in Florida.
Oh, that must be.
That was messy. That was messy.
You got to I assume you're just dripping like a faucet
the second you walk out the door.
Yeah.
I liked it, though. Oddly, I liked it.
Some people love it.
Yeah, I didn't mind it.
Some people love humidity. There's not any question.
Shreveport, Louisiana, same thing. It gets a little sticky, but you do what you got to do.
I think we may have located the Vikings mantra for the rest of this season for the Bumper to Bumper program.
Is that right?
The power of completions.
Excuse me?
Do you know the quote I'm talking about?
I think I do. It's been a lot of quotes recently.
It's true. There's a bunch. It's perfect. And it comes from, of course, KOC.
Who else?
The quarterback whisperer. The man whose job this week is to decide, because he'll make this call. No one else is going to make this call. He will decide who will start at quarterback when the Vikings host the Philadelphia Eagles, high noon on Sunday, right here on the Fan. 10 o'clock pregame, sermons 9, go for football Sunday 8 a.m., correct?
You got it.
One of the things JJ took away from watching Carson Wentz play was the power of completions. The power of completions that don't always go to the first or second progression. Might be TJ. helping out on a protection, and it's a critical 12-yard gain when all we did was really check the ball down. Or it's being surgical with your accuracy when number one is open, and you do that by getting to that lower body foundation and playing with great balance and rhythm. This was the Quarterback Play 101 quote, which I think came, was it from yesterday or the day before? I don't remember. Or maybe this is a combination of several KOC witticisms. The power of completions compels you, J.J. McCarthy, to learn when discretion is the better form of value. Now, that doesn't mean we want you to become a check-down Charlie, right? That can be, we saw that with Christian Ponder, did we not?
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Check-down Charlie. Because you felt like he did it too often and too quickly. But, in fact, during the break, I think you'll easily be able to find this. I've had the book and the movie The Exorcist on the brain lately. As I mentioned yesterday, I finished it last night, the book, rereading the book for the first time in a while. And online you can find, you may not want to watch it because all I'm interested in is the audio.
Yeah.
But knowing you do not have a good feeling on any horror film. Right?
I don't love
it. The accompanying film part might be jarring to you. So if don't look at it because I do not want to be responsible.
Well, how am I going to know if I find the right thing?
The edge? Well, because if you Google in,
you're sending me right into the trenches.
If you Google in, the power of Christ compels you, Exorcist, it'll come up. It's one of the most gut-wrenching scenes in the film. In fact, they don't even use that same language in the book. And it's when both priests who are performing the exorcism of the girl who is possessed in this film, this youngster possessed in the movie, Georgetown, they're trying, basically she has levitated, the entire bed is up at the ceiling. She's in it. But she's levitated because she's the devil. Levitated the thing to the ceiling. They're trying to bring the damn thing down is what they're trying to do. So what they keep saying over and over and over again is the power of Christ compels you. So for us, it's going to be the power of completions compels you, J.J. McCarthy, to learn exactly what KOC claims he wants. Now, what's interesting about this is, has KOC has he had to have been convinced? Because KOC historically has been a what? Let's zing it, man.
Every blade of grass.
Go. 38 yards downfield.
Every blade of grass. Activate.
Over the top.
Yep.
Activate.
You
Exactly
gotta activate
it.
all the options.
Exactly it. So maybe this is as much for himself as it is for anybody else. I've never heard the term before, the power of completions. Because, again, the whole point of it is, at least the way he says it, might be third progression. Might be a 5-yard pass. Might be a play where there's a greater chance for, well, first of all, if you catch it, to then get 12 extra yards after the play. That's where it can end up being a big play. The pass itself may not travel that far, but the receiver or running back or tight end who grabs it takes it the rest of the way, correct?
Yeah, this is a really bad day for you to bring this up with me.
Why?
Because today is actually a Wednesday for Gopher football because they have a game on Friday.
Yes.
I had some pregame things that I had to do that I usually do on Wednesday, but today's Tuesday, but it's a Wednesday. But I spoke to somebody, and we were speaking about Drake Lindsay, and inevitably the conversation about Max Brosmer came up.
Yes.
And what you just read, that quote right there about even if it's a protection route that we're not even supposed to throw to, you can get it to that guy and just live to see another day.
Especially if it's accurate, which he is.
That came up today talking about Brosmer. A guy told me.
Were you aroused?
I'm still aroused.
Yeah.
And he said there was a catch last year. Lemecki Brockington caught a pass that they hadn't thrown in like 6 years. But Brosmer saw it and wanted the completion because it was there.
It was there.
And the power of completions compel you. And because they were all conditioned that everybody's hot and you're always open, the ball just got there. This individual was in awe of what he saw. So I agree with you that this is sometimes you just got to take what the defense gives you and be available to all options.
And maybe this is his way of also encouraging Carson Wentz. Keep doing that. I'm not going to be offended if you do it. we've talked about the way this head coach as an offensive mind has evolved. And this offseason, the big change was going to be, we're going to run the ball. We're not going to be afraid to run the ball. Now we got 2 running backs, and we're going to be more of a power team at times. We're going to learn to win different ways. I don't know if we've seen it consistently. We've seen stretches of it. But this, you could say, is another act of the evolving, is changing to, I can live with that too, even though I like to be the guy, loosey-goosey, Air Coryell, the whole bit. Maybe, in this case, he too has convinced himself that the power of completions compels him to not get agitated or break out in hives if indeed that's what he sees his quarterback do. Especially, one could say, when your offensive line has been compromised. I think that's a big part of it as well, that it has to. You may not want to acknowledge that, but at some point you sort of have to. And maybe you get to a better place later where you can open some things up. So you try to find the soundbite during the break. I love it. The power of completions compels you. Anyway.
The Fan and 2 Men in a Junk Truck want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks with our National Cash Contest. And the keyword for the 3 o'clock hour is bank. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword bank.
That the power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
Dramatic. Father, I think Damian Karras was one of the priests, and then the accomplished, seasoned exorcist. Because Father Karras, he'd never done an exorcism before. He was a kid. He's J.J. McCarthy,
right?
Of exorcists, I guess you could say. But the old guy,
he was on a very early stage of his exorcist journey. Is that fair to say?
Yes. He was 0-0 in his first exorcism season.
Championship season,
you could say. Meanwhile, the other guy, Father Marin, I mean, he'd been around the world. He had done, if priests wore helmets and each star in the helmet represented one exorcism, he'd have no more room left on him. He was considered like the creme de la creme. Although it, frankly, ends badly for him. I hope that's not giving away too much if I didn't really do a spoiler alert there. But that's it. I think we adopted. In this case, the power of completions compels you, because that's the mantra offered up by the head coach. I think he likes this one. I don't know if he's going to repeat it very often, but he does find ways to attempt to capture things that are either moving or make you roll your eyes, one or the other, sometimes both.
Right.
I guess it's fair to say.
Depending on the mood you're in.
That's exactly
and the situation of the team.
You are 100% correct. So we'll see if we get anywhere with it. Lots of texts coming in, a bunch of texts coming in, including from Todd. Modern quarterbacks who get the ball out of their hands the fastest after the ball is snapped: Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. The power of completions compels you. That's it. I mean, you can make a really, really good living. And again, the passes will not look always that spectacular because they're 4 yards or 9 yards. Just slipping it out of your hand and just, throwing it right, left, up the middle. But keeps drives going. Keeps the ball out of the other team's hands. And especially if you have a sure-handed receivers and you have an accurate quarterback who can make those kinds of throws, can pull the string on it. So you're not throwing the ball, 150 miles an hour, because that doesn't usually work on the short passes very well.
Right.
What else do we have here? Several. I don't think Fallness will like this. 3-goal lead, the Wild Blue. Chicken wing greed is the new taboo. The power of... Let me start over. I already blew the line. Take 2. 3-goal lead, the Wild Blue. Chicken wing greed is the new taboo. The power of Christ compels you. Wolves in 5. That's not too bad.
Wild got the dub, though. Wallstad was a wall
so
in
they blew
overtime.
a 3-goal lead,
Yes.
the most dangerous lead in hockey.
Apparently more dangerous than two. Yep.
And is it possible we could just use him as our
Shootout goalie? I think you can do that.
Can you do that?
Yeah,
or is that considered, no, he's not warmed up enough if he hadn't played in the game?
Shootout goalie and overtime goalie. He had to fend off a power play late in overtime.
Yeah, that's possible.
And his reaction after the final shootout, you never see goalies really celebrate like a goal scorer.
No, he did.
It was awesome.
He did, yes, he did.
It was so then it becomes everyone's annoyed that they give up the lead. But then as that was going on, the overtime, and I was thinking it too, might be the best thing for him. Have to come up in a big spot like that. Maybe this will give him some confidence. He needs it, obviously. We've talked about his goaltending journey. And how many times has Guerin said you can't screw up goaltenders?
Are
He's
you
basically
suggesting
said the same thing.
Goaltender controversy?
I'm not, but it was a very positive development in his goaltending journey, I thought, because he came up big time. And that, I would imagine, can only help a guy's confidence. It was great.
Kyle from Isanti writes, so I'm imagining Josh McCown and KOC exorcising McCarthy with a playbook and a football and maybe splashing a little Gatorade on him. Let the power of completion compel you. Because indeed, in the movie The Exorcist, there is great effort to sprinkle holy water on the girl. However, part of the reason originally it didn't look like the church was going to sign off on the exorcism was the first time Father Karras visited her. He brought with him water, like a holy water vial, but it really wasn't blessed. It wasn't really holy water.
Oh no!
To see her reaction, and she acted like it burned. So at that point, he's going, "Well, this water isn't blessed, so it shouldn't affect her that way if indeed she's representing the devil." More on that later. Wentz has to start the next 3 games. If you lose them all, then it's McCarthy rest of the season. Even if it's not Wentz's play that loses the games. That's an interesting thought. What else have we got going here with? I propose we lend McCarthy to SFO and Shanahan for internship the rest of the season. Worked well for Darnold. Well, yeah, but we got our own quarterback whisperer, don't we?
We're supposed to.
So we're not supposed to need that. 88 degrees, dew point 61 in Cape Coral, Florida right now. Dan, this is Adam checking in from Dallas. From November until April, Florida is about as good as it gets. If you like sunshine, 80-degree day temps, and cool nights. He's actually, well, he says Adam in Dallas, but then he says Adam in Tampa. So maybe he's got homes both places. I don't know.
If you have the means, lucky.
Yeah, that's good for him. And a number of other people have pretty much said the same thing. Unrelated, well, I'll save it because it's a non sequitur, has nothing to do, although this has never stopped us before. Great, now Dan is trying to force a goaltender controversy down our throats like he's doing with this quarterback controversy. Well, I'm just curious. That's what you seem to be describing. You seem to be getting awfully excited about Volstead.
It was a nice moment. It was a very nice moment.
How did we blow the lead in regulation?
I didn't see that part.
What happened?
I'll be honest. They scored in the final minute, too, with like 44 seconds left.
Yeah.
So I didn't see that part. I just kind of watched the Wild, and then it was bedtime for the kids, and then I came back, and it was OT, so I watched that in the shootout, and he was great.
Power of completions. Dan, that's exactly what the Packers did with Love for his first 2 years. Gained experience and confidence, and sadly, they may have another great quarterback for 10 more years. Not according to Guardsy. You're still down on him. I think he's still... I'm not ready to anoint him as good as Favre or Rodgers, but I think you got to roll with him.
Love?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. They do have to.
Yeah.
That's the decision they've made.
Right, but I'm saying I think he's been a little better than you think. I think there's resentment on your part that they're ahead of us again with another guy. That's what bugs you as a guy who grew up on the Vikings. And
there might be.
They've had like 3 guys that they've been able to develop.
In my whole life, yeah absolutely.
Dan, I think you're under something. What about possibly the most important benefit of is if your quarterback gets rid of the ball quickly, your offensive line isn't locked down for 234 seconds trying to protect him and getting hurt. If the offensive, this must be dictated. offensive line only has to block for less than 2 seconds, they're going to stay healthier. Yeah, that's all true. And in fact, was it the Gessling? I think I read this quote from the Gessling piece today, and that's part of, he had all the stats. We've quoted several of these stats before. Yes, it's true that JJ didn't have a lot of help from his offensive line. He did not have Darisaw. We get that. But he also, the notion that all of his sacks were because of he didn't have a chance, he was holding on to the ball more than like any quarterback in the National Football League.
Right.
And so that's part of why the power of completions should compel him to get rid of the ball. But you still have to do it. You can't do it in a ponder way, right? You got to do it in a systematic fashion that makes you think you're doing it on purpose, not just by accident, right? That it's part of a plan. So even there, you have to show composure, right?
You do.
You absolutely have to show
know where
composure.
you're going.
Know where you're going.
Yep.
Who might be open depending on what defense you see in front of you. And how about the monsters of the Midway? How about the Chicago Bears? Primed to blow another game in which they had every opportunity not only to win, but to dominate Washington. They were giving it away over and over again, and then they got a gift. They got a fumble with 4 minutes to go as Washington's going to run out the clock, and they go right down the field. I told you yesterday, they win that game, they're going to be 4-2. They host the Saints.
That's true.
This is going to end up being a even more dangerous division than we thought. We'll see what Seifert's reaction is to NFC North activity to this point, at the quarter pole, so to speak, or beyond. And we'll catch up on his latest, I guess, instinct regarding who's going to start at quarterback for the Purple. You got questions for Seifert, 64686. That's the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text. Schism, McCarthyism, exorcism, Wolves in 5. That's from the infamous Flim Flam. Ed in St. Paul. McCarthy needs to touch every blade of grass. Fallness got wild sass. Bring your ass. Wolves in 5. Very disappointed to find out that Kevin Seifert would not be in studio today, but it's hard to whine too much about it because he has been pretty resolute in trying to get here when he could. In this case, I think family duty prevailed.
He's a father first.
And although I'm not sure what you're going to be watching because it looks like pretty miserable. Although, would these be considered prime, old-fashioned, throwback football conditions that you're waiting on?
It is awfully rainy and cold, and I don't know. I think, to me, football conditions goes over the rain. It's either really sunny and calm, or it's snowing and freezing. But this wet, nasty gray rain is not anybody's idea of a good time, I don't think.
By the way, before we get to some Viking stuff, I have to ask you. I was just looking at a headline online, well, actually on ESPN. Regarding a subject that Garzi and I explored briefly yesterday. Mike Tomlin is the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he went frontal with his bitterness after the Browns decided to trade the Methuselah quarterback they have, whose name I can never remember.
Joe Flacco.
Let me just, you know how I will remember the name? I'll just go with Joe Cool, because that's what some people used to call him back when he seemed cool as a quarterback. To the Cincinnati Bengals, Tomlin went off on it. Unusual, is it not, for a coach to be, even if it's within the division kind of a move, to be that frontal about whatever his unhappiness was there?
Extremely, and it kind of came out of nowhere. I think it was just a basic question about how Flacco was fitting in with the Bengals, and Mike Tomlin came out and said Andrew Berry, who's the general manager of the Browns, must be smarter than everybody else. And so you very rarely hear anything other than very veiled criticism towards another team. And my only assumption there is that Mike Tomlin was bitter, not just was basically bitter that the Browns potentially altered the short-term future of the AFC North by giving the Bengals, who seem to be totally out of luck at quarterback, a lifeline, and for not really a big price. I think that there was a pick swap there, and so there's a lot of teams that I think probably behind the scenes would be bitter about it, but very rare for anyone to do it. But Mike Tomlin, certainly as the NFL's most tenured coach, has the cachet to do it.
Is Cousins going to get traded before the deadline? The name keeps coming up when people are putting together the lists, but I don't know if it's because, well, it's an obvious name to put on the list, or because people actually think there is a way that something like that could happen.
I mean, it depends on how desperate the team is, and that's always been the Falcons' position. They did not have any interest, and I think they proved, they weren't just bluffing there, that they really didn't have much interest in trading Kirk Cousins for just to get his, sort of get him out of the building, because there's probably some ill will there. Like, they're going to want somebody to take on the salary or give them a whole bunch of draft picks and or players in return in order to make that deal. So you see a team like the Bengals trade for Joe Flacco at a much lower cost in terms of assets and salary than you would for Kirk Cousins. But if somebody is really desperate and there's another injury between now and the trading deadline, it's certainly possible, but it's going to take a lot.
If you had to place a wager in Vegas or any place illegal as well on who starts for the Vikings on Sunday against the Eagles, where are you placing that wager if you had to today?
If I had to today, I would say it's a safer bet to say Carson Wentz. I do believe that the head coach has left himself enough wiggle room that if J.J. McCarthy blows everybody away in practice this week, that it could happen. But it's going to take that type of week for J.J. To get back in the lineup this quickly. I think they want to see him go through a full week of full reps in the starter role, and to, upon their review, to be demonstrating no issues relating to the ankle or to any rust on the mechanical and fundamental issues that they've been talking about. And that's a lot to do in the course of really 2 or 3 days.
Texter writes this. This is from Chris. Only the Vikings can have a quarterback controversy that involves a guy that's not ready and a guy that's washed up. There is no good choice. Is that too harsh?
Well, I guess no one's bringing up the third option there.
Well, Guardsy will. Just give him time.
Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't put Carson Wentz in the washed category. I would just put him in the way we've talked about him in previous weeks, is that he's played well as a backup, and over time, backups tend to ebb and flow. Generally speaking, he's shown more proficiency in the offense in his third start than he did in the first, and so that's something to take into account too. I keep going back to it, but I thought it was really interesting how he kind of referenced, hey, I'm still learning how to throw to Justin Jefferson. There's a lot of passes that you wouldn't throw to anybody else, but to him you can, and it works out. And so, as we saw in that final drive against the Browns, and so I think there's still room for growth there. I don't think that you can necessarily say he's the guy that's going to lead them on a long playoff run, at least right now. But I don't think that he's washed either. Okay, so a little too soon for that for you. Okay, that's fair. I'll accept that that answer. Here's another text that's come in directly for you. This is from Carl, Lake Elmo. Add Brian Flores' response today on Harrison Smith's snap counts to the long list of odd injury responses this season. Seifert, is this year different in terms of injury clarity than years past? Because it seems bizarre this year between the Darisaw stuff, Harrison, and JJ. Well, on the Harrison Smith thing, the response to the response that Brian Flores gave on Harrison Smith today told me that from a football standpoint, they feel like they're in their best lineup with Theo Jackson and Josh Metella playing every down, and then Harrison Smith playing in the nickel. When we followed up on that and said, what's changed here? Forrest said that he still feels like, they're working their way back. But like Harrison Smith really, he's been a full participant in practice. Like, I suppose it's possible that there's still some lingering conditioning issues from having missed training camp, but we're definitely moving past the explanation, the injury explanation, the personal health issue explanation that applied prior to the bye, than where we are now. If on Sunday after the bye against the Eagles here, if Harrison Smith is playing, just the dime or the nickel or, a third or, 40% of the snaps, then I think we have to assume that as of now, at least, he's not their first option at either of those safety positions. It doesn't mean he doesn't have an important role with the team, but I don't know where else we can look for an explanation other than they've made a little more of a football decision as opposed to purely a health decision.
Well, but I mean, that's interesting, right? I think, is it fair to say that's the first time that's been clarified to that degree?
Yeah, and he, in the follow-up, he did reference still coming back from stuff, but I guess the larger point is that when he was asked if Harrison Smith is going to ramp up into a full-time role, he didn't say that he was. He said that, that Theo Jackson and Josh Metellus are playing well, and that it's going to be more of a game plan, situation as far as answering that question, what's best for that particular week, and what's best for the team. And he said it's possible that they'll look to get him in a little more, but just the overall tone felt to me like more about football and less about health.
We've been having some fun with one of the richer KOC quotes regarding the quarterback situation, or maybe not so much that, but style of play. And I'm sure you've seen it. You might have been there for it. I don't know. And this goes back to him, to the head coach, suggesting that I think this was Monday, where he suggested that, look, as he's sat, JJ has absorbed a number of perhaps compelling lessons from the veteran, Wentz, starting at QB. Yeah. Here's the quote. One of the things he took away from watching Carson play was the power of completions that don't always go to the first or second progression. So we've kind of figured that could end up being the mantra of the year, that the power of completions compels JJ to not be afraid to take small chunks of yardage, not be afraid to check down. That's even a term that I think the head coach uses in this particular quote. Although I mentioned maybe it's an education for the head coach himself as a guy who just tended to want to zing the ball. So are we going into this new phase where whoever is at quarterback, all we care about is the power of completions? Not so much that it's got to be 29 yards downfield to JJ.
That he actually has been pretty consistent with that. I don't think he's used the phrase power of completions, but I can remember him over previous years talking about how important he thinks any completion is, and the damage it does to a defense, and that even if it's just 2 or 3 yards, minimal chunks down the field, that over time those take a toll on defenses, and they move the ball in the right direction, and they're important. And he doesn't want, big game hunting to completely ignore the value of just finding a place to move the ball forward through the air. And so he's been I think that's one of his central mantras and always has been in terms of the passing game. And I know, there's a perception, and a lot of it's fueled by reality, of his desire to get big chunks down the field, and that's not a bad thing. But he also has been pretty consistent, and it's something I've heard him preach over and over again over the years, is just find a way to get a completion, a completion.
Yeah.
Go through the progressions. The plays are built that if you don't see the first one, the second one will be coming open. And if the second one isn't coming open, then the third one is timed to come open. And so they're going to be there. Just find the one that's there and throw. And so I think to me, him bringing that up means that he probably didn't think McCarthy was totally on, track doing that all the time. And I think the completion percentage would tell you that's the case. And just seeing Carson Wentz kind of more, efficiently following that, especially against the Browns, some against the Steelers and Bengals as well, of just finding ways to complete the pass, make something of a positive of it, and go to the next play.
Back in the Christian Ponder days, I was certainly in the group that mocked his, I felt, almost obsession with checking the ball down, and to the point where we referred to him, one of his nicknames was Check Down Charlie. And somebody pointed out, well, the problem in Ponder's case was he had no choice. He had one of the weakest arms in the history of the game. Is that true? Is that your recollection of it? Did he have a noodle for an arm?
Oh, I don't know that I recall it being a noodle. It wasn't a Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz 75 yards in the air kind of thing. But I'm trying to remember who would have been his downfield receivers in those days. I don't know that they had a great list of them. Those were that was prior to Diggs, I think, maybe, and prior to Adam Thielen. Maybe I'm getting my errors wrong. But I don't know that arm strength was the number one thing there, but he certainly wasn't one of the strongest arm quarterbacks in the league. Do
you buy the theory that if Wentz plays at least creditably to better than that? In other words, the basement would be creditably, but at least that good and maybe better. And the Vikings beat the Eagles, that there's no question that he would start against the Chargers. And then at that point, then after you come off that game, you got extra time. Maybe then at that point, you take another fresh look. Do you buy that premise? If Wentz plays reasonably well and they win?
I think they have probably 2 more games of wiggle room here before they really have to address.
I agree.
The depth chart question, I guess. Again, maybe McCarthy blows everybody out of the water and it gets answered this week and he plays. But in the event that it does not, and Carson Wentz plays this week, and barring complete disaster, you can easily get him to that Thursday game and say, look, like, we only have one practice between the Eagles game and the Chargers game. It's not enough time to affect this change. I think everybody would buy that. But then the following week, which I think is the Lions, if it's still Wentz, then you basically have to accept that he's the starter, and that JJ is the backup or a backup, and you go from there. But I think they're probably a couple weeks out from having to even if they don't say it, even having to demonstrate a choice there.
Guardsy reminds us that the word now from the Vikings is that both quarterbacks will be made available tomorrow. Earlier today, I heard the Paul Allen Project with KOC for X's and O's, and he said it's unlikely that he's going to pull the old, we're not going to make an announcement until Saturday or Sunday, that he will probably declare before then. What do you make of that decision for tomorrow? Is that just playing the thing out a little bit more, or do you think there's any chance they really might try to create suspense all week?
I don't think what I took from his answer was that they're not going to literally say, we'll let you know 90 minutes before the game who the starter is. Very possible it go at least until Friday. And even if it goes to Friday, not out of the question that they wouldn't announce it. They're certainly not obligated to. And, there might be some advantage to it, but I think that functionally they'll have an idea here in the next 48 hours, I would think, for sure. And when they announce it, I guess it's got a little bit of logistics and semantics. Both of those guys talking tomorrow, I mean, you can't hold people back from talking to the media just because there's I don't want to say competition, but there's a question as to who's going to be the starter. I mean, all players are supposed to be made available to the media. So I take that as just the Vikings facilitating the fact that they're obligated to talk and everybody's going to want to talk to them. So they're going to organize that. If one of the players had been at the podium and the other hadn't, I suppose you could maybe read something into that, but, I guess it doesn't sound like that's what's going to be the case.
Do you buy the notion that the Vikings have sort of well, blundered is not the right term, but lucked their way into finding Brandel's best position, might be a position where they need immediate help at center? What do we make of those comments?
Yeah, today, we asked Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator, how he thinks about Blake Brandel after it started making his first ever start at center. Do they just view him as a guy who can play it, or somebody that they might want to use because Ryan Kelly is on injury reserve, the starter, and Michael Juergens is working his way back. Should be in practice yesterday, should be in practice this week, but they would have to make a decision. Do you want to play Juergens or do you want to play Brandel? And what Wes Phillips said is that we might have found out here that center might be the best of the five positions for him, and so that would give them. That indicates to me that they're at least strongly considering keeping Brandel at that spot. And you say you always want to have your best five offensive linemen on the field, and I do think that he's one of their top five guys. And if he can play center, that probably is the best case scenario, and he certainly showed that he could the other week. So they didn't come right out and say it, but it certainly would make some sense if that's what they end up doing here, at least in the short term.
I think we're giving up so far this year 132 yards a game on the ground. I think the Eagles have a pretty good runner who's been struggling, at least by the standards, the lofty standards he had established. So the assumption, I have to believe, is the Eagles are going to challenge the Vikings to prove that they can, handle the running game?
That would be very smart on their part and probably a good idea and a good place to start, at least in a road game against the Vikings. And I think that the Vikings are well aware of where their deficiencies are, and Brian Flores seemed to indicate they spent a lot of time this week or during the bye week kind of ripping that apart and looking at everything they're doing. And I do think, assuming we're on track to see Blake Cashman on the field here quickly, after he had his practice window open, that would help them from a tackling perspective and also kind of getting everybody else in the positions that they are best in. And so I think there's a little bit of help there, but I definitely think the Eagles, it's a no-brainer for them to at least test that out.
I'm looking at the current National Football League standings. In the NFC North, there is not a single team below 500. The Packers are in first place technically at 3-1-1. That's a 700 winning percentage. The Lions, after getting spanked in Kansas City on national TV, have dropped to 4-2. The Vikings are 3-2, and the Bears, who did find a way to not screw it up last night, also are sitting at 3-2. So I think I asked, was it Johnny? I asked somebody else this. I don't think I asked you this recently. The current state of the division from a standing standpoint, win-loss record standpoint, does it in any way feel different than you felt about the division and these teams before the season began?
No, I thought it would be competitive. I thought all the teams would be. I didn't think there'd be any bad teams, and I think we found that out to be the case for sure. It's not like the AFC East where you have a Jets team that hasn't won or something along those lines, or the Dolphins who seem to be crashing out. This is four competitive teams, four teams that if they were in other divisions would probably be, just percentage-wise likelier to make the playoffs than they are in this division because they can't all, I guess in theory in reality, they're all four not going to make the playoffs. But in terms of whether there's one team that's going to run away with it, I thought initially it looked like the Packers. I thought the Lions would have a harder time starting off with their new coordinator situation, and they, even though they did lose to the Chiefs the other night, they've gotten off to a pretty decent start. So it doesn't look like there's, at least right now, there's a team good enough to run away with it, but it also doesn't look like there's a doormat in it either. So in the overall scheme of things, of it being a very competitive division, I think it's shaping up to be what we thought.
Is a 3-2 record through 5 games good enough, given, at least on paper, what the rest of this schedule seems to offer in terms of the Vikings' challenges the rest of the way?
I guess it depends on whether you're of the mindset that some of these teams don't look as good as once thought, or if you take a larger look and say, well, how good are those teams compared to the rest of the league? Our ESPN analytics model has the rest of the Vikings schedule as the hardest in the league. The number one most difficult record the rest of the way. It has them favored to only win 2 of their remaining, 12 games?
Yeah.
And so that's about as hard as it gets. And so whether, even if they were 5-0 at this time and facing that difficult of a schedule, it would be a tough one. So I think the Vikings, frankly, have their work cut out for them. It's way too early in the season to feel like we know for sure who's the good teams and who's the bad teams. But based on the information we have now, they very much have their work cut out for them.
Did I also see one of the other nuggets you had along with that one, that the Vikings, at least as of now, are favored in only 2 of their remaining 12 games?
Yep, that's the version of the ESPN analytics. It's the Bears game, and I looked at this before last night. I don't know if last night really changes anything, but they're favored to beat the Bears in that game that would be here, and they're favored to beat the Giants in Week 16, and that's it. And again, that's analytics, that's projections, that's limited information. It's not saying it's against the rules for them to win more of those games, but that's the way at least one model is seeing it right
Interesting.
now.
Very interesting. Well, good luck on today's game, the football game you're about to attend. And
thank you.
We will, I hope, chat even perhaps in studio as soon as next week.
That sounds good, Dan. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Ben Lieber will join in about 45 or so minutes, a little more than that. Luigi will join for more tropical climes at 5:30 as well. Keep the as I mentioned earlier, keep the texts coming. Lots more to get to. I'll ask the audience if they can help us out booking a guest who might be just walking around downtown Minneapolis today. We'll get to that in a minute.